However UFC fighter does against Ilia Topuria, from former champions to featherweights to lightweights to the welterweight champion of the world, starting off with prime Conor McGregor at 155. Now, McGregor does have the power, speed, and technique to KO Ilia, but I feel like his only real chance is in the first round. He loses speed pretty quickly and his power pretty quickly. He doesn't have the best cardio, where Ilia kind of keeps his power later on in the fight, as seen by the Josh Emmett fight. He can mix in his grappling pretty early, similar to the Max Holloway fight, where I feel like he could gas out Conor pretty quickly and take away his chances. I think Conor has a really strong start where he wins the first round, he stays at range, he's kicking Ilia, tagging Ilia when he comes in, but I think overall Ilia is just going to eventually find the shot. He's pretty durable, and I think he finishes Conor McGregor at the end of the second round, late round TKO, in my opinion, once Conor starts to slow down. Next, we have Jose Aldo. Now, Jose, he has pretty good boxing, tons of speed. He's a fast twitch fighter, very good defensively, where Ilia won't land any leg kicks or score any takedowns. But he has some of the same issues as Conor. For starters, he slows down and loses his speed somewhat fast. He was never really chinny, but he did get finished multiple times. And Jose, he usually starts off good, and I think he would have a good round one. But given he fights at a closer distance than Conor, I think he's in more danger. And he likely gets KO'd inside 2 rounds, in my opinion. I'm going to say kind of the same result, a late second round TKO. Now, going with the featherweights, Volkanovski, the rematch. Volk, he's very good at fighting at range, and even though he did do well against Lopes, who also hits very hard, he did get hit multiple times. He wasn't able to really take the big shots, where yes, he survived, but he did get hurt. And he doesn't have a bad chin, but it's just not good enough to face Ilia, and he does get hit. I'm very glad the rematch didn't happen. I do think Volk makes it outside of the first round. He's very talented, but it's going to end in the same exact way the first fight did. He gets finished again. I'm going to say a late second round TKO. Next up, we have Max Holloway at 155. Now, Max, he looked great at 155 against Gaethje. Obviously, Gaethje is nowhere near as good as Ilia Topuria, and I do think Max's chin is going to hold up better at lightweight. And out of anyone Ilia has fought, I feel like Max has given him really his toughest fight to date. Max was able to win the first round just barely, and Ilia was able to win the second round just barely, and it was super back and forth until the knockout. I also question how well Ilia's cardio will hold up in the later rounds at 155. I think Ilia wins the fight, but I think it's competitive until the very end. I do wonder if Max gets finished or he just loses a close decision, but I would lean Ilia by KO again in like the late third round. I think so far Max would give him his toughest fight, but the reason I lean in a KO instead of a decision is because even though Max holds like the record for every single significant strike record, he is the most hit fighter in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. You cannot afford to get hit against Ilia. I think Max gets knocked out late in the third round. I think he does a little bit better. It's a little bit more competitive. Maybe he wins the first round a little bit more clearly, but ultimately he loses and gets finished. Next up is Evloev. Now, he's very underrated. I think he would take down Ilia Topuria, and I will say he's very underrated on the feet. He has good striking. His output is decent. However, what hurts him is he has no finishing ability at all. And even if he makes it outside of the first round, you can't go 5 full rounds with Ilia without getting knocked out in all likelihood. And I think he would win the first round. I think his grappling is very good, and I think he would take down Ilia. He would win the first by control time, but eventually Ilia is going to find the shot, and I think Ilia would win by like a third round TKO. I think it would be kind of similar to Max, where it's back and forth, except Evloev is having success in the grappling instead of the striking. I think he gets knocked out, but he does give Ilia a tough challenge. Next up is Diego Lopes. Now, Lopes has a great chin, but he did get cracked by Volk early, and Ilia just knocks out. He cracks everyone's chin, even if you have a granite chin. And I think Ilia KOs Lopes bad in the first round, almost identical to the Oliveira fight. I will say, though, Lopes is one of the few guys that can knock out Ilia. But I think it's just unlikely that he finds the shot first compared to Ilia Topuria, and I think he gets flatlined in the first round. He does have a puncher's chance, but I just don't see him winning. I don't see him finding the shot before Topuria. Next up is Yair. Now, I will say Yair is dangerous on the feet, and he can knock out Ilia with some sort of crazy head kick, But Ilia Topuria, he's a smart fighter, and I feel like he just would follow Volk's blueprint. He would take him down early, and I think he would submit him in the first round. I think he has a much better submission game compared to Volkanovski. And Yair also got wobbled by Volk in the third round, so if it stays on the feet, I still think Ilia would win most of the exchanges and knock him out. But I think he submits him in the first round with relative ease. Next up, we have Silva. Arguably Ilia's hardest fight at 145. Silva has unreal cardio, strength, and is durable. He's also faster than Ilia and has great counters. He is sometimes low output though, and I feel like Ilia could just outpoint him with leg kicks. Gene can crack, and I think he could hurt Ilia, but again, I just see Ilia landing the shot first and knocking him out. I will say though, Silva, I think would have success and wouldn't get finished in the first round. I think it would be back and forth, and I think eventually Ilia would knock him out at the end of the third round. I think it's his hardest fight at 145. Silva, in my opinion, is a future champion, and it would be competitive, but again, Ilia is just different. Now, the guys with no chance at 145, Aljamain Sterling, great grappler, but he slows down and is open on the feet. He's just eventually going to get knocked out. Ortega, he almost died against Lopes. First round KO. Murphy, he's good at distance, but if Volk and Max couldn't do it, I don't think Murphy is going to do it. Zero finishing potential. He gets knocked out probably in like the second, third round. Arnold Allen, he got dropped by Evloev. I think he gets knocked out in the first round. He likes to go forward similar to Lopes. He's going to get knocked out in the same exact way. Now, at 155, we have Khabib. Now, he did put himself at risk, but he does have a granite chin. He has a much better chin than Charles Oliveira, and I feel like he has the best chance at securing the takedowns. He has ridiculous pressure, and he's very good at making his opponents hold his weight and gassing out his opponents. I feel like out of everyone, he has the best chance at gassing out Ilia Topuria, and he's the only person that can stop him from carrying power late. I think Ilia's best chance is a first round KO or second round KO. But honestly, I think that this is a 50-50 fight. I do think legacy-wise, you can argue that Ilia is higher than Khabib, and I even think Makhachev, you could argue, is higher than Khabib. But stylistically, I do think Khabib can win this fight. He also is very dangerous on the ground. He can submit Ilia Topuria. And while it is 50-50, I would almost lean Khabib by like a third round submission, fourth round TKO, something like that, like a ground and pound finish. Another thing that worries me about this matchup is Garam, I believe on Embedded, if I'm not mistaken, said that Ilia doesn't really grapple because he uses up a lot of energy doing it and he'd rather save his energy, which does make sense, but Khabib is going to make him waste his energy, and I do think Khabib can win this fight. Again, it's 50-50, but I would lean Khabib by like a fourth round submission or maybe just a decision where he wins by the later rounds. I would go with Khabib. I think I would lean by like a decision, a 48-47 decision, winning the last 3 rounds. Next up, we have Islam Makhachev. Now, before the fight, I said Ilia would win by like a 5th round KO, but after the Charles fight, here's how I think it would go. I don't think it ends in the first few rounds. I don't think Islam is going to get done like Oliveira. He's better at distance than Charles, and he's just better defensively. He also has success on the feet, but I don't think that he's going to secure really any takedowns early. I think he's just going to have control time on the fence, doing good in the clinch, landing knees to the body. And I think the fight comes down to how Ilia's cardio looks in the 4th and 5th round. If Ilia's cardio holds up, then I think he wins by like a 5th round KO. I don't think my prediction changes. I think it's going to be insanely competitive. I feel like a lot of people are counting out Makhachev because of how good Ilia looked at 155, but Makhachev is so much better than Oliveira. I would lean Ilia just because I think that his gas tank will hold up better. And I think Makhachev, unlike Khabib, even though I think he's more skilled than Khabib, especially on the feet, he's not going to make Ilia Topuria fight at a very high pace like Khabib is, where Khabib has the best chance at gassing out Ilia Topuria, which is how I think you have to beat him. I mean, this guy is like unstoppable everywhere. He seems unbeatable, but there has to be some sort of weakness that he has. And honestly, I think at 155, the best bet is he slows down later on in the fight. So again, I would pick Ilia to defeat Makhachev, even though I think Islam is a better fighter than Khabib. I just think stylistically, he doesn't do as good as Khabib. I would say Ilia by a 5th round KO. Next up, Ilia versus Paddy. Now, Paddy Pimblett has a shot at winning this fight. I don't think he's going to have a ton of success in the grappling, but on the feet, he's not as reckless as Charles, and he does better at fighting at distance and using his reach, his length. He also has a much better chin than Charles Oliveira, but he leaves his chin up wide in the air, and he does get hit a lot. I think that he would get dropped at first, maybe like in the 2nd round, and I do think Ilia would knock out Paddy Pimblett in the third round. While Paddy Pimblett does have stuff that'll help him in this fight, he's just not the same striker as Ilia Topuria. Next up, Ilia versus Arman. I think Arman would make it out of the first round. He has great kicks. He sometimes fights at distance, and his wrestling is insane, and he has a great chance at getting Ilia Topuria on the ground compared to Charles Oliveira, but he's not as dangerous as Oliveira, and he doesn't have really finishing ability enough to finish Ilia Topuria. We saw Silva wobble Arman. I just think that Ilia Topuria would find the shot, probably in the second, third round, again, knocks him out with relative ease. Arman is good enough to make it competitive, but he's not good enough to finish Ilia Topuria, and he's going to get knocked out. Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje would get flatlined probably in a minute. Gaethje, he's pretty chinny, and Ilia, he's just going to rip the body, then go to the head. I don't think it's competitive at all. I wouldn't want to see this. This is not the fight to make. Next up is Dustin Porier. I feel like with Poirier's boxing, I think it could be competitive, and he is durable, and he is the bigger fighter, but he doesn't have the power that Ilia has, even though Ilia is the smaller guy. It would be competitive for like the first round or two, but eventually he's going to stay in the pocket, and Ilia is going to make his reads. I'm going to say Ilia wins by like a second round KO. Dan Hooker would go exactly like Charles Oliveira. Dan got dropped by Gamrot. He's chinny. He's super tough, but he's going to get flatlined in the first round. Fiziev, super skilled on the feet, but his main issue is that he doesn't have the ability to hurt Ilia. He also gasses out in fights, which is partially because of short notice, but overall his gas tank just isn't great. And as good of a striker he is, as technical as he is, the power difference is insane, and I think Ilia still would be the bigger fighter, and I think he would knock him out probably in like the third round. I'm going to say like a third round TKO. And the rest of the fights are not competitive at all. Gamrot has great wrestling and can take him down, but again, no finishing ability, would get knocked out probably in the first round. Dariush, he has no chin. He got dropped by Moicano. He would get knocked out in the first round. Moicano is also pretty chinny, and he slows down in fights. He probably would get knocked out in the first round. Michael Chandler, beyond washed, and he's chinny, knocked out in the first round. BSD, no striking defense, knocked out in the first round. And Grant Dawson got knocked out by Bobby Green. He has great wrestling, great ability to get it to the ground, but he would get knocked out in the first round again. Now, the third belt, if Ilia wanted to become the first fighter to get 3 belts, he would have to face JDM, and I think JDM would win this fight pretty easily. His boxing is elite, he's more durable, and Ilia would gas out bad at 170. I think his gas tank holds up at 155, but with all the muscle mass he would have to put on to make it to 170, he would be the much smaller fighter, and he would slow down. I think JDM would knock Ilia Topuria out in the third round. So to recap, I think Ilia's hardest fights in the UFC would be JDM, Khabib, Makhachev, probably like an Arman Tsarukyan and Gene Silva. I think that those are his hardest fights, and I do think he wins most of those fights. Let me know who you think beats Ilia Topuria, which ones you disagree with.